if I can say so, I mean, you have, as it were, a bigger problem than I have on that because you, I think, self-identify as a liberal, I suppose, as a left winger, don't you?
You know,
And
we should get into that because at this point I'm not even sure what that means.
no,
We should
I'm
go
not
through the
sure what it
checklist.
means either. I'm not sure what it means either anymore. And, and so on. But I've never particularly cared for that. I, in all sorts of ways, regard myself as a liberal. In all sorts of ways, are regarded by some people as being left wing. But I don't particularly care about it, and I think I'm more identified as being a right winger or a small c conservative, and so on. And I sort of don't mind about the labels anymore. And to tell the truth, I know it might be different in America,
Mm.
but in Europe and in Britain these days, I think that these things are mattering less and less, and we're losing patience with this game. Because you see, if the whole game is played on the left's terms, as it were, then first of all we'll lose because there is no possibility of confronting very large societal issues only with one fragment of the political spectrum. And it's also very clear, I would say, by now that and I mean, look, I've got, like I say, some of my best friends on the left, but it is very clear to some of us that the left has been the problem on dealing with these issues. It is the left that has been throwing around willful and I think deliberately, knowing that they're not true, allegations against people.
Mm.
You know, I've often said that with the modern left, since certainly the end of the Cold War, they've basically had a supply and demand problem. They want racists, they want Nazis, they want bigots, and actually, thank goodness, certainly in my society, I think in yours, they're in pretty short supply, and so these people have to find them. They want a supply of bigots and racists and fascists, and actually the supply is extremely small, and the people that they demand are too small in number to really give them enough of a political identity. So they stretch it out. They've deliberately used as offensive terms as they could, and used them of people that they must know do not fit that
Mm.
label. And I think the result is, by the way, among other things, that they have denuded certain terms of any meaning, and that this is going to come back and bite the left in a big way. And I can see this happening in Europe all the time at the moment. You know, the accusation of racism, for instance, I don't think it's going to wash for very much longer. I
Mm.
just don't.
Mm.
Nobody cares as much as they used to about that because they have seen the left use it on everyone. I've seen it for years. I've seen my black friends called racists.
Right.
I've seen my black friends called sellouts and coconuts and all sorts of things. I've seen the most vile racial abuse of racial minorities by the left. And I don't care about this anymore. It's too late to be willing to be blackmailed by people who are fundamentally insincere in their insults.
Yeah, but there is still seems to be a mystery here because I agree with you, and it's something I've often remarked on that the tactics being used here are just shockingly dishonest. But the commitment to using such tactics, the fact that people see no ethical problem in accusing someone of being a racist who they know isn't a racist, or a fascist who they
Sure.
know isn't a fascist, there must be some underlying urgency motivating that. They must think that the ends justify the means in some
Well,
sense.
of course, it's politics.
But what's amazing is that they are, and certainly on the topic of Islamism, functioning as de facto apologists for theocracy.
Sure.
So this is it's the fact that they don't see this, the fact that this, or that don't care about this, the fact that identity politics and their concern for, generic brown-skinned people or generic
Mm,
immigrants trumps any concern they should otherwise have about real fascism and real theocracy and
mm,
real human rights abuses, that still strikes me as somewhat mysterious. I feel like I'm in the presence of people who
mm.
have made some kind of reverse Faustian bargain, where it's like they've sold their souls to the devil and they got stupid in return. I mean, so
Yeah.
just before the atrocities in Paris, the previous news story was the students at Yale, where we just saw these students,
Mm,
and their shrieking narcissism. I mean, these
mm.
are among the most privileged kids in human history, and they
Yeah.
became moral and psychological invalids in response to a polite email about Halloween costumes.
Yeah.
So something is
Well,
very strange on the left right now.
well,
What the hell is going on?
could I give one explanation of what it is? Another another conservative who I'm sure would make you tingle with slight fear, as
Hmm.
it were, if I mentioned his name. But an American conservative who used to be on the left and moved very much to the right, David Horowitz.
Mm.
Um, he said some years ago something very interesting uh, about 1968. Now, I mean, we know we might have all sorts of issues about this, but he said something to me I think is far more true today, which is that the surprising thing is not that young people would rebel. Young people always rebel. This is something that young people do. The surprising thing is, why did the adults give in? Now, I think this is far more relevant to today rather than 1968. The amazing question which hovers over Yale University is, why do the adults sit and take it and the kids can run rampage? What's happened to? And this is the really large problem which Islamists and other terrible people are simply taking advantage of. Somebody needs to say to the shrieking girl who's effing and blinding at her professor, you know what? You're not at a home. This is not a home for you. It's a university. It's a very different thing. And what's more, if you cannot cope with Halloween costumes, then you've got no place at a university because you're going to have no chance of dealing with quantum physics or Shakespeare or Heidegger if Halloween spooks you out this much. You're a useless person and you're going to go into a useless career because if you're a lawyer and you have gone to Yale, but you're too sensitive to hear about rape cases, you're not going to be able to represent anyone in a court of law. So you're no use for the law. You're no use for literature because you might read a novel which will trigger you. You're no use for the sciences. You're no use for anything. And that's what the adults should be saying. They should be telling the kids to grow up. And the adults have lost their confidence. And that is the most striking thing to me.
Mm.
And let me just say one other thing about this. This whole thing of the weirdo sexual obsession, transgender, trans polygender, identify cis. I've got a penis, but I can still win Glamour Woman of the Year award. And who are you? If not only do you have to respect me as a woman, if you say I'm not an entire woman, despite the fact I've got a penis, still you're a bigot. And then you got to find them. You got to find Caitlyn Jenner attractive. If you don't find her attractive, you don't want to sleep with Caitlyn Jenner. You're an even bigger bigot. This is what, and actually, to cite the other person you just said that would trigger you, Sam Harris, Mark Stein said this the other day. This is the conversation we're having when the mullahs will nuke us.
Right.
Everyone will be discussing whether somebody is transgender despite the fact they've not had any operation. There's a woman in Britain called Jack Monroe, a fatuous far left-wing so-called anti-poverty campaigner, totally talentless individual. This blogger has recently come out as transgender. She says, by the way, she's not going to do anything about it. We just have to call her transgender and regard her as transgender, but she's not going to get a penis put on her, and she's not going to have her breasts reduced or taken off or anything, and she's not going to... We've just got to start calling her a non-sexual pronoun. Now it's theirs for Jack Monroe. The Pink newspaper, I'm gay, I read some of this crap. The Pink newspaper ran a story about Jack Monroe becoming transgender because she says she is. I think she just wants a bit of publicity. They run a piece about her, and they've got to say there. Jack Monroe wrote a piece on their blog saying that when they was younger, I mean, it's an assault on the language apart from anything else. Anyone who cares about our delicate and beautiful language should turn away now. But we'll all be discussing whether somebody who hasn't got a penis can be a man and whether somebody who has got a penis can be Glamour Woman of the Year when the Islamists come in with Kalashnikovs. It's pathetic. It's a breakdown in our society, and you have to rectify it.
Oh, that is hilarious. Well, for those who may just be introduced to you again for the first time in this podcast, There you have a taste of the kind of ire that Douglas is able to summon in the midst of a debate. And that's a gear, unfortunately, which I don't have and wish I did. I think perhaps that part of my brain was damaged by too much meditation.
It
But
is bad for you.
yeah.
It is bad for you.
Well, it's certainly bad for this, and you have this gear, and Hitch obviously had it, and it is incredibly useful. So keep that well oiled. Now to the substance of what you just said, though. But first of all, the fact that you're gay, does that give you any more freedom to say what you just said? Or are you also going to get hammered for that
No,
litany?
doesn't give you any more freedom. I say it's all about politics. Don't be fooled. Uh, Homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia, all these things are shut up and let me speak. And don't think anything different from me. I've never had a single bit of credit from the left for being a gay man opposed to radical Islam. Of course not. Why would they? I don't want it, by the way. I don't want their pats and their pandering and their and anything like that. But I see all of these things used against people all the time. It's politics. Um,
Uh,
and they don't really care about anything else. They never
yeah,
did.
let's focus on that for a second because in terms of the anti-intellectualism of all this for me, it's really the core. People are focused on what you think more than how you think. You know, if you do not think what's been prescribed in the canon of your side of the political spectrum, this presents an immediate problem for you. And any train of thinking that seems to test those boundaries, or God forbid, leads into some area of novel thought or a position that doesn't align with all of the predictable ones on the checklist of left and right, then you are anathematized. And yet what you think is not what is important here. It's always how you think. It is how you reason. It is the fact that you're available to good chains of evidence and argument. And if you're not available to those things, you're simply not in touch with reality in an ongoing way. And you are an unreliable witness to every subsequent
Mm-hmm.
event. I mean, all you have is dogmatism.
Yeah.
If your views are not on the table
Mm.
to be modified by new evidence and new arguments, if you push a conversation in a direction that is uncomfortable, and again, I find this especially on the left, although it's similar to what happens in a religious context when you begin to challenge the veracity of Scripture or any other dogma.
Mm.
If a reliable chain of reasoning and evidence begins to push up against the boundary of some leftist shibboleth, you just reap a storm of personal attacks and lies, and
Sure.
there are no rules.
Sure. But I mean, why would there be? I mean, these people, as I say, they're fighting for everything that they think they believe in. Why would they not play as dirty as they like? I mean,